can we quickly summarize, and then we'll talk in greater lengths? What is the book, The Smoky God, which was written by Willis George Emerson? Maybe if you can summarize it within a minute or two,
Yeah,
please.
so Willis George Emerson was an author who was contacted by Olaf Jansen, who liked the way he write, who liked his work. And Olaf Jansen was, I think, in his late 80s or 90s, very old man. And he knew his time had come, but he had something on his chest that he wanted to get off his chest. And he decided to contact that man. So George Emerson, Willis George Emerson, went to meet with Olaf Jansen, who was very frail and old. And Olaf Jansen started opening up about a trip he took with his dad as a youth. They had a boat, a fishing boat, and they went. Him and his dad. They were they were Norwegian, so and they left, took onto the sea, and they went on a fishing trip that brought them farther and farther north. And they kept going, and they kept going, and they passed the point where it was like past some icebergs and everything, and they had reached such a northern point where they ended up in a realm that they never thought they would see in such a cold temperature, where they entered that realm of the inner earth, and they met there with a civilization that was highly advanced, and they were giants. So that's the interesting part for me about the Smoky God, is that they spent some time there. Was it 6 months or a year? I don't remember exactly from the book, but they
Yeah, I think
spent,
it was between a year and a two. And
yeah,
what struck me, he said that even though it was around North Pole, but when they were approaching this unknown civilization, it became warm.
there you go. And the temperature was very temperate and wonderful, and like there was beautiful landscapes. And they spent time with these giants who were not hostile. So that threw me off a little bit, because when you study the Nephilim and all that stuff, and you read Enoch, and you're like, "Whoa, the giants, they're bad news. They're bad news." Not in that account. They weren't bad news. They basically had a countercultural exchange, where during those months that they spent there, they were their guests. They exchanged. So they were asked a lot of questions about the surface world, where they came from, which I found interesting, that civilization, that advanced civilization, didn't know much about the surface world. So they were asking them, and they were exchanging back and forth and learning from one another. And so he talks about that, and he talks also about coming back. And then his life took a turn for the worse when he came back. Olaf Jansen, he ended up in jail, and an uncle of his thought he was nuts. And anyway, it didn't go well. He ended up in jail for a while, and then he learned the hard way because when he came back, he was enthusiastic. He was like, "I got to tell my family, I got to tell my friends, this is crazy what I lived with my dad," and blah, blah, blah. And so he opened his mouth and he talked too much, and it got him in big trouble. So after that stint in jail, and when he was released, he moved to the United States. And there he lived a more quiet life, where he didn't really talk about anything that he had seen until that time where he was older. And he was like, "The world needs to know this. I can't just die with this information inside of me. I have to get it out in the world." And he chose Willis George Emerson to write it all down, which the man did. And it became the book known as The Smoky God, Voyage to the Inner Realm of to the Inner World. So that's the account that is shared in the North Pole and Inner Earth Chronicles, which is absolutely fascinating. Of course, there's a lot more detail than what I just said, but that's the crux of the book.
I just want to add one very important topic, if you
Go
allow me
ahead.
to.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating that Olaf and his father were still worshippers of old Scandinavian gods, Odin
Yeah.
and Thor. Yet, Olaf testifies then when he visited this supposed underground civilization that they were worshippers of Yahweh. But he didn't say Yahweh; he said Jehovah, and
Mm-hmm.
they showed extra hospitality, kindness, and even escorted them back safely. And I'm thinking this is a very interesting detail, but we'll go back to that in
Absolutely.
details a little bit later. I just want
Yeah.
to add this because this is, I
It's an
found it
important detail. Yeah,
fascinating.
and they were, so they had the beliefs of that they had in Norway back in the day. Yeah, the worship of Thor and Odin and all that lore. But it was still interesting that they were able to recognize that Olaf Jansen was able to recognize elements from Scripture, and he integrated them in the book, talking about Eden, talking about the four rivers that connected in Eden, and all that. So there's a lot of stuff shared there.